Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we step back in time, not to the castles, nor the knights, but to the dark, narrow streets of the Middle Ages, where every shadow carried a secret, where people lived in constant fear, not just of war or plague, but of something far more terrifying: superstition. These were not just silly old beliefs. To them, every crack in the wall, every flickering candle, every odd noise in the night could be a sign, a warning, a curse. Tonight, we'll uncover the forbidden, forgotten world of medieval superstitions. Many of them still lurk among us today, quietly hidden, waiting. Let's begin. In the Middle Ages, life was uncertain, harsh, and short. The average peasant faced hunger, disease, war, and death daily. Doctors couldn't explain illnesses, priests could only pray, and science, well, that wasn't trusted yet. Instead, people turned to something else, something ancient, something dangerous: superstition. You see, back then the world wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, everywhere. They believed invisible forces filled the air, good spirits, bad spirits. And everything that happened, good or bad, had a reason. If your child died in the night, if your crops failed, if a neighbor's cow gave sour milk, it wasn't chance, it was a curse, or worse, a punishment from above. Now, here's the dark truth. Even though the church preached against pagan superstitions, it often encouraged its own. Church bells were rung to drive away storms and evil spirits. Priests led processions to bless crops or scare away plagues. Holy relics were paraded through towns, believed to heal the sick. It wasn't just religion, it was survival. People clung to anything that promised protection, even if it meant believing in charms, potions, or whispered curses. In some places, superstitions became so powerful, they were practically law. If a town's well went dry, they wouldn't look for plumbing problems, they'd hunt for a witch. If a baby was born with a deformity, they'd believe it was the result of a sin, or worse, a changeling swapped by fairies. People were terrified of breaking these unseen rules. To the medieval mind, nothing happened without meaning. A black cat crossing your path, not cute, an omen of death. A raven crying near your home, a sure sign of disease or disaster. Even ordinary objects held terrifying power. Shoes placed on a table could bring sudden death. Knocking on wood wasn't for luck, it was to awaken the forest spirits to protect you. Horseshoes over the door, they weren't just decorations, they were shields against dark magic. Imagine waking up every morning knowing, if you sneezed wrong, it could invite evil spirits. If you spilled salt, you'd need to quickly throw some over your shoulder to blind the devil. If you saw a bat during the day, someone in your family might soon die. This was life for many medieval people. A constant struggle to outsmart fate. They weren't foolish. They weren't simple. They were afraid. Afraid of a world they couldn't explain. And in that fear, they found superstitions. But what happens when those fears grow? When the superstition itself becomes the very thing that haunts you? Morning has arrived, but the darkness hasn't left. In a small medieval village, as the sun rises behind thatched rooftops and wooden fences, the people begin their day, but not without protection. Because in the Middle Ages, every action was a gamble against fate. Every step could invite ruin, unless you knew the right superstitions to follow. The first act of the day wasn't breakfast. It was defense. Peasants would make the sign of the cross before stepping outside. Farmers would spit 3 times before leaving their homes to spit away misfortune. Some even hung iron tools by their doors, axes or knives, to keep away demons. Children were taught early, never leave the house without saying a blessing aloud. Otherwise, the fairies might hear you. Bread wasn't just food, it was sacred. People believed bread carried the power of Christ. Before baking, They carved a cross into the dough, not just for blessings, but to let out evil spirits hiding inside the loaf. If bread fell to the floor, you couldn't just pick it up. It had to be kissed, blessed again, and sometimes even burned to destroy the bad luck. Salt was one of the most feared and respected items in medieval homes. It preserved food, but also preserved souls. Spilling salt was no small accident. It meant the devil was near. The only way to undo it: toss a pinch over your left shoulder, directly into the devil's eye, who always lurked behind your left side. Some believed that failing to do this would bring death within days. People obsessed over their doors and windows not for thieves, but for spirits. At night, every crack was sealed with cloth, animal fat, or even ashes to prevent witches or fairies from sneaking inside. Chimneys were believed to be the favorite entrance for demons. Some villagers went as far as hiding bones, herbs, or even urine-filled jars inside their walls to trap evil forces. Even your clothes were not without protection. Children were often forced to wear necklaces made of garlic wolf teeth, knotted strings infused with secret prayers. Women would hide tiny iron pins or silver coins in their bodices to ward off unwanted male attention, or worse, the evil eye. Some beliefs were so strong they could turn deadly. For example, if a pregnant woman walked under a hanging bridge, it was believed her child would be born cursed. If two people swept the floor at the same time, the youngest would soon die. If someone fell ill after you visited their home, you could be accused of witchcraft. People were burned, drowned, or hanged over accidents that today would seem absurd. Imagine waking up every day knowing that if you forgot a blessing, walked past the wrong tree, or left your door open during a storm, you might not survive the week. They didn't live like this for fun. They lived like this because they were afraid. Afraid of hunger, afraid of sickness, afraid of the unknown. In this world, superstition wasn't foolishness, it was armor. And yet, even in their fear, they weren't wrong about everything. Some of these old beliefs, they weren't just superstition. Some were warnings. One stood above them all, feared, whispered about in every village, and still believed in many parts of the world today: the evil eye. They called it mal occhio, or simply the look of death. To medieval people, some eyes could curse you, simply by looking at you with jealousy, anger, or hatred. No words, no spells, just a glare, and doom followed. Crops withered, children fell ill, livestock died suddenly, women miscarried, men went mad, all from a single glance. Villagers believed they could feel when the evil eye had struck. Common signs included sudden dizziness or fainting, sharp pains with no cause, milk curdling overnight, eggs rotting from the inside out, a sudden death of a chicken or goat. In some regions, people even believed blue-eyed strangers were more likely to carry the evil eye. The fear was so intense, entire communities developed secret rituals to protect themselves. Some of the strangest included spitting on yourself 3 times after receiving a compliment, burning strands of hair mixed with herbs to create protective smoke, carrying amulets shaped like hands, eyes, or horns under clothing. One famous symbol still seen today, the Hamsa hand, traces back to these ancient protective charms. Though the church officially forbade superstitions, many priests quietly offered blessings to break the evil eye. Some churches even sold blessed bread, or holy salt, specifically to guard against the curse. Villagers would line up, desperate for protection, clutching coins, eggs, or wool to be blessed. But with belief came terror. It wasn't enough to protect yourself. People wanted to find the source of the evil eye, and that led to accusations: women with sharp tongues, men who lived alone, midwives, even children born under eclipses were accused of possessing the evil eye. Some were banished, others were beaten, or worse. Today, some historians believe the evil eye may have been an explanation for food poisoning infectious diseases, mental health issues. But for medieval people, it wasn't science. It was a reminder. In their world, even a friendly smile could hide danger. They didn't just fear witches or ghosts, they feared each other, because anyone could curse you with their eyes. And if that was their fear during the day, imagine what haunted them in the night. In our next chapter, we'll step deeper into the darkness, where animals were no longer just animals, but warnings of death and messengers of doom. In the Middle Ages, the night wasn't just dark, it was alive. Eyes glowed in the shadows, claws scraped against wooden doors, and wings beat against the cold, black sky. Animals weren't just creatures. They were omens, messengers of death, and servants of dark forces. Among all creatures, none were feared more than the wolf. To peasants, wolves were not simply predators. They were cursed beings. It was believed that if wolves were heard howling near a village, a death would soon follow. A war was about to begin, or worse, a werewolf walked among them. Yes, the legend of the werewolf wasn't just a fairy tale. In medieval villages, many believed certain people could turn into wolves under the full moon, cursed by dark magic or demonic pacts. Villagers would sometimes kill wolves and hang their bodies on trees outside town as a warning, not just to other wolves, but to the creatures that watch from the darkness. Today, cats are loved by many. But in the Middle Ages, they were feared and hated, especially black cats. People believed black cats were witches' familiars, demonic shapeshifters, or witches themselves, hiding in animal form. If a black cat crossed your path, it was believed to curse you with bad luck, bring sickness or death to your household, lead you into temptation or evil. Some towns held ritual cat burnings, horrifying public events where cats were burned alive to ward off evil. The skies, too, were filled with dread. Certain birds were seen as bearers of death. Crows and ravens symbolized war, famine, or plague. Their presence near a home often foretold a coming death. The owl, feared across Europe, was believed to be a cursed witch in bird form. Its cry said to steal a person's soul at night. Villagers would hang dead birds on fences to ward off their curses. In medieval witch trials, animals weren't just witnesses. They were often the evidence. If a woman was seen feeding a stray cat, if a man kept too many black chickens, if a child played too often with birds, they could be accused of sorcery. Some accused witches were even tortured until they confessed to sending animals to harm others. Why such terror? Because in the medieval mind, animals could travel between worlds. They lived in forests and caves, flew in the skies, howled at the moon. They went where humans could not, and that made them dangerous. They feared the wolves outside their doors, the cats under their floors, and the birds watching from the rooftops, because they believed one thing above all: when animals came close, death followed. But in their darkest fears, there was still something even worse. Not animals, not eyes, not curses. The one thing that terrified them more than anything else was their own dreams. In the Middle Ages, even sleep wasn't safe. While the body rested, the soul wandered, and dreams weren't just strange stories in the night. They were messages, warnings, sometimes even death sentences. Medieval people believed that every dream carried a hidden meaning. They believed that God, or the devil, could speak through dreams. If you dreamt of a flood, it meant war was coming. Fire, sickness or plague would strike your family. A fall from great heights, a sign you'd soon lose your status or wealth. Teeth falling out, a sure sign of death in the family. People would wake up in panic, trembling in fear of what their visions meant. Dream interpretation wasn't a game. There were people in medieval villages known as dream seers or night priests. They were sought out in secret, often visited in the dead of night by terrified villagers. These dream interpreters would listen to your dreams carefully, consult strange books filled with ominous symbols, offer rituals, prayers, or charms to protect you, usually for a price. But beware. If your dream was too dark, they might accuse you of witchcraft. Nightmares weren't just bad dreams. They were believed to be demonic assaults known as night hags or incubus attacks. People reported waking in the night, paralyzed, with a heavy weight on their chest, unable to breathe, unable to move. To medieval villagers, this was no medical condition. It was believed a witch or demon was sitting on their chest, stealing their breath. Sometimes these demons were sent by enemies through black magic. Other times they were seen as punishment for secret sins. Villagers had bizarre methods to prevent nightmares, sleeping with iron tools under their pillows, keeping holy relics near their beds, placing garlic or onions near doors and windows, reciting special prayers before sleeping. Some would even sleep sitting upright, believing lying flat made it easier for demons to attack. Sometimes, a nightmare alone could ruin a person's life. If you admitted to dreaming of a neighbor dying or of having power over someone's body, you could be accused of sorcery. Entire witch trials began because of dreams, and once accused, dreams became evidence in court. In a world without science, dreams held terrifying power. They weren't just visions, they were warnings, threats, and sometimes weapons. But if their fears of dreams seemed terrifying, there was another superstition even worse: forbidden, feared, punishable by death.